Om Sadashiva Samarambam Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Param Ishvaro Guratmeti Murti Veda Vibhagine Vyomavda Vyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha Sava Vedanta Sedanta Gocharam Tamagocharam Govindam Paramanandam Satguru Pranatoshmaham Om Om Shanti 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 Om Namaste. Welcome all of you, our little Sangha. We are here to do our Q&A, and if we don't have questions, we won't have answers. If we have answers, we won't have questions, and then we have the option for our big picture with Paramarthananda. So we don't have our official questioner, but we have his backup, which is Mr. Claudio. But anyone, please feel free to present any contribution or questions or observation, insights, illuminations.
If no one has, I have one.
Please.
Okay, I do. Little question about the Ananda part in Satchitananda, no? The self is Satchitananda. In the Ananda part, the limitless, no? Limitlessness. It is correct to think that limitless means that we have no properties. We don't assume the properties of the mind, the properties of the body, because you always say that this is an important part. No, understanding the Ananda part in Satchitananda is very important. It is correct to think that you understand the Ananda part when you don't identify anymore with this form. It is correct or not?
Yes. So you can understand it philosophically, but you can understand it also on a more practical level or experiential or existential level, you understand? Which is on our day-to-day experience, we are all the time doing things consciously or unconsciously with the goal to remove this inherent sense of limitation, which is the constitution of any and all objects of mithya, not only the human jivas, but all jivas and all objects. They are limited by their attributes, as you began to form your question. So if you have attributes and then you are limited by those attributes, oh yes, but I have good attributes. So I have the best qualities possible, and I'm a very good personality, very wise and very clear and sattvic. So I have wonderful qualities about myself. Therefore, I keep my sense of identity, because it feels like it's worth it, So the question is that whatsoever qualifications or whatsoever qualities, attributes, talents, characteristics, and we may develop that makes us successful even in the spiritual level, in the sense of being, producing spiritual punya on a regular basis. You understand? All of this is limiting us because all of this is part of the play of the gunas. you know, is Maya superimposed attributes in our very, very fundamental intrinsic nature as the attributeless consciousness, which is the witnessing conscious principle, no? Awareness, yeah? Witnessing everything that is coming within the scope of this light of awareness. Okay, and I do know my state of mind, for example. I know my talents, I know my sattvic condition, I know my wisdom, my knowledge, in the same way that I know my body and so on. So everything, if I feel bad about myself, is too bad. If I feel good about myself, it's still too bad that you have made an identity with the feel good ego. You understand? So the question is, even if you have good attributes about yourself, it's going to limit you. In which way it's going to limit you? The most clear and simple one to understand is that as a body-mind complex, you are limited by time, you are bound by time. And then when death begins approaching, and then how you're going to behave, you know? You have identified with yourself as the body-mind complex, which, by the way, in this example, is very wise, is very sattvic, you know? And now you are losing the body-mind complex and you did not gain the wisdom. The only real wisdom to free us and to establish us in our true nature as the attributeless awareness, okay? This that witness all attributes. So we are witnessing all, everything we see around us is the attributes of Maya. It's superimposed, you know, all these objects, and these objects, they are constituted by numberless attributes. You know, everything has several qualities, purpose in life. Everything is created for a certain purpose, and it has properties. We keep trying to understand, you know, using science, the the properties of everything, of the plants. You know, everything on the planet has certain attributes and certain properties, certain purpose within the creation. Yeah? So our attributeless nature is which allows us to witness all the attributes. Okay, so and then if you discriminate the attributed self, you know, which is the body mind complex and its experience on the five sheet levels, or the three body levels, or the three states, whatsoever level of experience we have, those are superimpositions. They are attributes, you know, that makes us the body mind complex having different experience, and we are witnessing everything, you know? So this witnessing subject, non-experiencing entity, because the experience entity as well is stands because of its attributes, the three gunas, you know, and the physical body, the subtle body, the causal body. So we need all the colors of creation, all the colors of Maya. Maya colored the world, that colored every one of its objects, you know, with its attributes. Remember, I say that the three gunas are the building blocks of all these configurations, that they are colored by different attributes. We can look into that from that angle as well, you know. So we are witnessing all of that, and we can only witness as the attributeless, you understand? Because the mind is colored by the attributes, which is going to make the mind more clear, less clear, more rajasic, more tamasic, or more sattvic. You So those are attributes as well. So we need to understand our nature as attributeless. And then moving into the ananda. So everything we do on the practical level in our day-to-day experience of life is an attempt to remove this sense of limitation, which is imposed by our very attributes, our very properties and qualities, that we define ourselves by these qualities and attributes. But then if I am a doctor, medical doctor, and then I will feel limited, and then what I'm gonna do? I know I want to be a scientist as well on another field of science. You understand? I mean, there are people who goes and they keep wasting their life, let's say, from one degree into another degree, because no matter how many degrees you have, you're gonna be feeling limited by not having other degrees, not having other fields of knowledge. You understand? So we do what we do because we feel limited. And then Vedanta comes and says, so you need to understand that by doing things, you are never going to reestablish this sense of security, joy, and fullness and completion. Because no matter the effort, you are always going to be feeling limited, because only Ishvara is everything manifest. The jiva is just, a little bit of, oh no, I can manifest as a jiva like this, a jiva like that. And everything I try to become, is going to be a problem, because it's going to show that I still feel incomplete, empty, limited. Okay, so everything we do is trying to remove this. And Vedanta comes and says, so you do not need to do anything. You need to understand your primary nature as awareness, consciousness. Because if you know, if you understand, and if this knowledge is clear, and it is a doubtless law, doubtless knowledge, okay? And then naturally your sense of identity shifts from the body mind, which is a configuration of attributes, to the attributeless consciousness. So why to be the attributeless consciousness gives ananda, gives satisfaction, gives joy, gives security? That's the question. We need to understand that. Oh no, I heard that. I need to understand that I am awareness, I am consciousness, and then I'm going to be satisfied and full. And why? I ask you, Claude, why it's so important to recognize our primary nature as consciousness, so that we no longer feel limited. So what is there, in knowing that you are consciousness and not the mind, not the body? What is in that knowledge that makes you feel limitless? So, because this understanding is very important.
Uh, I think you just said it, because if you are free from the attributes, you are free from limitation, you don't feel limited anymore. So natural bliss come out, or satisfaction, security. For the moment, this is my understanding.
Yeah. And we need to understand the psychology there. The moment that we clearly understand our fundamental nature as the free, attributeless conscious awareness, once we understand that, and we understand the implied meaning of understanding, I am just conscious awareness. What is the implied meaning? The implied meaning is that there is only consciousness in truth. You know, everything is just consciousness, and then there is a superimposition of attributes. You know, project by Maya. You understand? Ishvara, this dynamic superimposition of attributes. So once you understand the fundamental nature of Ishvara, Jiva, and Jagat, o mundo, né? The world, you understood the substratum, the fundamental nature, and then you know that that which I am, that which everyone is free of the world, because the world does not touch the substratum of the world the same way all the objects, the physical material objects in various forms, do not impact the space in media. We have space and we have all these infinite numbers of configurations, of forms, and they don't impact the space. Why? Because the space pervades all forms, and it's free. Why? Because it's all pervasive. What do you mean by all pervasive? It pervades every physical material object, the atoms, everything, it's pervaded by space. Okay, in fact, when science goes into investigating, and then they see that it's basically space, with some energies moving around that sometimes seems to be a particle and sometimes it's just vibration and so on. So space is pervading everything. Consciousness, of course, pervades Mr. Maya, pervades Ishvara, pervades the world. Okay, it's pervade all the five elements, pervades the space. So we are that is not impacted by anything of the world. Why? Because my nature, which is the true nature, is non-dual. Non-dual is one without nothing beyond consciousness awareness. Conscious awareness is the only play, I mean, to use an English expression, is the only game in town. But it's not much of a fun game when you don't have Maya superimpose attributes and names and forms, because and that brings up this speculation that maybe Brahman was tired of being whole, full, and complete, and enjoying its limitless nature, having no hide and seeking games to play, and then he somehow he empowers Maya to produce these projections. So we need to understand, and that's what I was saying. On the philosophical level is what I was about to say. That I am pure, limitless consciousness, and everything happens within the scope of this non-experienced witnessing subject phenomenal. It's not phenomenal consciousness or principle, or entity which is not an entity. We don't have names to refer to what we are, because every name is a definition of attributes. So we always in difficult to refer to consciousness, but we know what consciousness. So on the philosophical, we can say many things, but on the practical level, is like when you know that you are consciousness, and then what happens to the psychological level is that your consciousness, that there are objects appearing within the primary object called your own jiva. It appears in the mind, and the mind exists not apart from consciousness, and consciousness is one. Now you understand that the world is there. You cannot really deny the experience of the world. But if you know your fundamental, primary, superior or higher fundamental nature as consciousness, you don't fall for those identifications with the attribute, attributed body-mind complex. You understand? You give up trying to be a better you. You know that is never going to be a perfect jiva. You leave it all to Ishvara. You understand Ishvara. You understand? And then what it does, when we are moved by this fundamental ignorance, we are all the time chasing objects of desires and fears, trying to gain, trying to avoid. And that creates mental, emotional disturbance and psychological suffering, because we fail to try to control the field of experience. We cannot really choose and control. No, I only have favorable circumstance or experience. So we are all the time agitated, trying to control that which is uncontrollable. You understand? And we fail and we get frustrated, right? So once you know your primary nature and you shift naturally, gradually, you shift your identity to the conscious awareness on which the jiva and jagat were, they just arise. So once you shift to the light of the illuminator that illumines and reveals the jiva and its experience. Okay, you did that. What happens to your vasanas? The vasanas every day tells us go around doing things to gain, maintain, and avoid. So once you shift your sense of identity to limitless consciousness, which is your primary nature, so this has an effect on avidya, which is the ignorance, and avidya remains alive in our causal body as tendencies to do certain things, run, to try to accomplish our desires and avoid the whatsoever we don't like, my likes and dislikes. My life is moved by my likes and dislikes, and that creates suffering because it's impossible to experience only pleasure. Life as a jiva is an experience of pleasure and pain because no jiva can control one's experience. You understand? So once you shift to I am limitless consciousness, and then you continue to experience the world, but you experience with from an angle in which ananda, experiential ananda, is possible. And this ananda, this sense of self-love, satisfaction, peace is the best name. You understand? And that from that angle you experience this security, this joy, which is not depending on the objects of gaining or avoiding. You are gaining that ananda from your knowledge. I mean, I was going to say within. There is no really within. You're gaining that, and it's coming from self-knowledge, self-recognition. So I am, in my true nature, conscious awareness. And conscious awareness is limitless because it's the only reality. You understand? And out of consciousness, Maya projects Ishwara Jivan Jagat. So you understood that, and then you know that you can never really be in fact. And that has a very, very strong impact, positive impact on our ignorance. It dissipates ignorance like nothing else. Okay, self-knowledge dissipates or neutralizes or cancels or kills or destroys the ignorance that makes us suffer and become a samsari. Now, understanding of on the philosophical level, you think, okay, I am consciousness, and consciousness is everything, and then all these superimpositions of objects defined by its attributes is just not real, not self. So philosophically, we can do a lot of work, but this work, it needs to be somehow processed and internalized until we experience the third part of this self-knowledge. I know I am consciousness. I know I'm existing here, but I'm not existing as the body mind. I'm existing as existence itself. I'm consciousness here, conscious, but as consciousness, not as the mind. You understand? So we need to understand this not only philosophically, but this we need to understand it, let's say, emotionally, psychologically, in a way that our ignorance is extensively neutralized, and then we experience a certain ananda that does not come from our accomplishments, to our gaining of objects. You understand? It comes from this conviction of my primary fundamental true nature as consciousness. And we have to remember another angle to this conversation about ananda is that a lot of people experience ananda by being successful in the world. They go and they get it, they accomplish, and they experience small anandas here and there. Some other people, they gain ananda, which is experiential bliss. They gain ananda by conquering the mind and developing a yogic mind or sattvic mind in which they experience great bliss, great satisfaction, great peace. Okay? So this experiential ananda is again an object. You understand? So you can get ananda from the samsaric world of objects, and you can get ananda from the spiritual samsaric world of mental states. So when we get this ananda from a certain mental state, we are still getting an ananda that comes from a certain object. But as soon, if I don't have the self-knowledge, from that I can gain self-knowledge. Okay, because the sattvic mind is it's a good ground, a good platform on which self-knowledge can be apprehended. But if I don't gain self-knowledge, I become vulnerable and dependent to a certain state of mind. Okay, I'm experiencing ananda, but this ananda is still dependable on a certain object, a sat object meaning my mental state. And that's what people in the spiritual world becomes attached to this object, sattva guna, attached to sattva, as we say. Okay, and what is the difference between experiencing ananda from this sattva object, mental state? You experience great joy, great bliss. And I say those things because I have had my first-hand experience. Because for those of you who know me a little bit more, I walked away from this experience of bliss. I used to run a restaurant. If you look at my my I would say profile, no, not profile. Huh? And my biography. There is a small biography. One time somebody asked me to write a biography to go and do something in Germany. And then later on, James, he enjoyed because I sent it to him and he edited a little bit. It is somewhere around here. So I came a point that I was experiencing great bliss in my sadhanas, but I was very frustrated because I was standing up from my meditation cushion, going back to my world, and then running a restaurant. And then without understanding what was going on, I was saying like, oh my God, I lost my enlightenment again. Because now I'm feeling, again, irritable and incomplete. And and then I was very close to walk away from the restaurant as if the restaurant was the real cause of my suffering, until I understood that a mental state, a spiritual experience is not the end. You understand? And I understood that with a book that was written by which was transcription of words of Nisargadatta Maharaj Guru. You understand? And in that small book, he was making a clear distinction between knowledge and experience. And that was much before I met James, a few years before I met James. So I understood that everything I was doing, I was experiencing a certain freedom, a certain bliss, joy, and bliss. Bliss is the best word, And but it would change as soon as I would suspend my effort to control my mind. You understand? So that is another form of ananda. So we say in Vedanta that knowledge is always good. Knowledge is always good, as opposed to experience is good, but it's not always good because the nature of experience is impermanence. It comes and changes and it goes. So, but knowledge is always good. Once we know that 2 plus 2 is 4, we never need to relearn that because we know for good, we have put it to the test and we have made several exchanges and we know that 2 plus 2 is 4. Once you know something and this is a doubtless knowledge. And then you don't need to do any effort anymore to come to the end result for. You understand? You know it for sure. So when you want the knowledge that is going, spiritual knowledge that is supposed to free us from suffering, and you come to the understanding of your true nature as the attributeless conscious awareness, you understand? And your nature is non-dual. There is nothing but only this consciousness, and this consciousness is shining as the world. That's why James called shiny world, you know, because consciousness shines as the world. You understand? Shines as the world. And then once you understand all of that, and then this knowledge is said to be a paroksha jnana. It's not subject to forgetfulness. It's not subject to revision, because the self is the light of the illuminator, and it's always present and it's never changed, and you can put it to the test. And that's where this understanding it grows, you know, roots, because it is something that can be testified as my life experience, you know. So I know that I am this limitless consciousness, and I don't forget it anymore. And what it does to the mind, because before I was thinking that freedom was contained in a certain state of mind, and I was trying to control my mind to experience freedom, bliss, you know. And now I convert my desire to experience bliss by controlling my mind into a desire to understand my nature as limitless, attributeless consciousness. Once I understand it, you know, fully, clearly, and firmly, and then what happens is that naturally my state of mind is going to become a factor of producing satisfaction and peace. Why? Because without having to make any effort, because 2 plus 2 is 4, and it's never forgotten. So now I know, and this knowledge is going to neutralize ignorance, and this knowledge is going to establish the mind of the jiva, yeah, of the seeker, as a wise person, because naturally it gradually becomes more and more sattvic, and sattva is the mental condition, yeah, influenced by a lot of sattva guna. It produces peace. A lot of people talk about it produces clarity, you know, but it produces peace. Okay, so now we have a mind that is resolved by jnana, not resolved by controlling the mind. The mind is properly resolved by jnana, and the jnana is always good. And then the yani, the jiva, the thika, gradually becomes more and more wise, experience more and more clarity and peace and satisfaction, you understand? And it does not depend on the object. It depends on this knowledge, and the knowledge is always good when it is properly retained and integrated. I think we covered your question, huh, Claudio? I think it made up that satsang today.
I think totally, very clearly. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Anything else? Okay, let's go back to our big picture, shall we? We have seen last time we did some work on the big picture. We entered into the Bhakti, the chapter 7, Bhakti, So devotional bhakti. And then we saw that there are three kinds of bhakti. Bhakti, in other words, is love. We love what we love. No? Usually we don't love what we don't love, but we love which what we love. What we love usually is something that is going to give us self-love. You understand? We're going to be fully satisfied with life and with ourselves because I got my object of love. So we see that the bhakti devotion is love, and there are three levels of love, as Swami Paramarthananda presented it. He says that there are three things that counts to this love. We have the object of love, and we love what we love, as we say, and we pursue what we love. This is the end love. The end goal is my object of love, and I will do everything to gain that. And then there is another level of love. Usually we love the means by which I work to gain my object of love. So Paramarthananda presents the end love, the means by which I get my end love, my object of love. And then he presents the other level, which is self-love, because I do what I do, yeah, and I enjoy working for 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 getting the object of my love. What is the object of my love here? I mean, we as Vedantis, we are lovers as well. People sometimes they get confused and they think that we from Vedanta, we are not devoted to anything, we are intellectual, dry intellectual. No, the love, our love, the object of love of Vedanta is self-knowledge. Okay, and and we want that because we came to the maturity to understand that self-love is the ultimate love, because all other objects that we chase in the world, you know, they serve only the purpose to satisfy myself, but satisfies myself because my self-love is the main reason by which I do things. We do what we do because we love ourselves and we go for the objects for the sake of pleasing myself. Huh? So we have these three levels: the object, the means by which I get my object, and then the true self, which is the self-love. I love what I love because it pleases myself to love what I love. And there are several Upanishads that presents that is for the sake of myself, I love my wife, my husband, and so on. We have covered that in previous uh, class. Now we have these 3 degrees, and we say we love the objects, and that is a very strong love. We love the means, it's a little weaker love because, oh my God, I still have to do what I do to gain my object of love, but I still enjoy it. I want to seduce that person because I'm in love with that person. So I'm going to play so many games until I get that person to love me. Huh? We know this game. Huh? So we do it, and we love the means by which I'm gonna get my lover, my new lover. So we have the end, we have the means. The means is less intense as love than the end love, but the highest is the self-love. Okay, so it's the self, it's the love for the self, because we do all of that to please ourself, and ourself is something other than the mind, as we know. So, and then that takes us into devotion. And in terms of intensity of love, one feels for God. It will depend upon how one views love, views God, because people see the divine in different ways. So after we have analyzed devotion for, generally speaking, to common objects, now we go into the love of God, which is called bhakti. This bhakti, it has certain degrees of or intensities, of love. It depends on the way we see God. If our understanding of God is the highest or it's the lowest. So there are people that have a certain perception of Somebody fell, left. Who was that? Karen? No.
Elizabeth had to leave from the point
Oh,
early.
okay. So this Bhakti. So the person who does not really experience much love in this play with God are the people who are so materialistic that they turn to God only once in a while when they are suffering. You know, they are suffering, and then they go there and they knock at the door of God and say, "Hey, I'm suffering here. Please forgive me my sins, and help me. Help me to change situations here, and give me a better karma, prarabdha karma, and so on." So the person is asking things to God. We know that anybody praying to God, approaching God, or being a devote of God, I mean, asking for the removal of our suffering is the lowest. It's not even bhakti, But there are a lot of people who turns to God, especially in the Hindu society, culture. They turn to God only when they are in real trouble. And then they almost do not experience any bhakti, but they are just there to ask help in those moments. And then there are people that develop a certain understanding of God, and God start growing, and then they get in contact with a personal God. Oh no, I'm a devotee of Vishnu, or Shiva, or Narayan, or whatsoever is my deity. So those are a little bit better, love, and people love God. And again, they love God, they love Krishna because they want security, protection, and accomplishment in lives, and they want to gain and to have success. They go there and they ask something. Oh, please help me, I have a daughter. Now when we look into the Indian society, I have a daughter that I need to marry that daughter. So help me to find a husband, and so on. So help me with my new endeavor. I'm opening a new shop, or whatever. So they go there to ask protection and security and prosperity. So this is very common, people, and they love, they respect, because they came to understand that God is the ultimate giver of the result of our efforts. And then they say it's better. I try to love God and gain God's sympathy, and asking Him for protection. And then we move gradually into Kama Yoga. Kama Yoga is where our true devotion, love to God begins, because our relationship with God as a Kama Yoga is not too based fundamentally on asking, but it's more on giving, adding value, So we see God as manifest as the field, the Dharma field. We develop understanding and knowledge in respect to the laws by which God controls and manage the field. And then we understand that we need to conform to these natural laws. And then we develop a lot of appreciation and devotion, and true devotion begins once we have grown into Kama Yoga, to become a Kama Yogi. But let me follow a little bit here the book. For a lot of people, love of God is conditional. They look upon God only as a means for achieving some worldly results. They might pray, chant, and so on. When that fails to happen, they throw away their prayers, books, and they feel angry with God. We don't notice it, but every time we are angry with our life, with our prarabdha karma, with circumstance and happening, we are angry with God. You understand? Because we are not accepting the circumstance of our life. Oh, I'm very angry. You are angry with whom? Are you going to put on anyone? But fundamentally, you are fighting Shwar. You are angry with Shwar, So they get angry and their wish failed, and they were not materialized. Those are more materialistic people. The second form of devotion is a more mature. These devotees are the seekers who look upon God as the ultimate goal of life, the attainment of which will bring peace, security, and lasting joy. So they see God as the ultimate goal of love, and they know that in this understanding and in this emotional devotion, in respect to this God, they find a much more solid peace, security, and joy. Okay, so why? Because now they understood that God is not only my personal God, but God is the Lord of this universe. All personal gods, they are agents, let's say, agents or sales representative, let's say. you know we have Ishwara up there, and we have all these agents, and okay, they are there to fulfill anyone's wish and desire. Oh, I want this, and then go to that entity, and so on. And it seems there is some power behind those activities. But when we come to Vedanta, we know that we are looking for a real lasting joy, and the lasting joy and the joy of uh, of loving Ishwara is a lasting joy. And there is a lot of discussion in the spiritual world, because the Bhaktas, they challenge the Yanis, the Vedanta people, saying like, what else? What is this saying about trying to transcend God? Why to try to understand, a God which is not from this world? You know, what is he saying that you are beyond? The self is beyond God. God is everything there is, and I get so much joy and love from God, and I want lasting joy. So I developed this incredible relationship with God, and my suffering is neutralized. But anyhow, when we have this relationship with Ishvara, our freedom, our joy is not absolutely lasting joy. And the best illustration of this is the case of Papaji. Papaji is someone I stayed with for a few years. And Papaji was a devotee of Krishna, and his family was a devotee of Krishna and most probably he was related to Krishna for several births. And and he was fully satisfied until somebody brought to his attention that his Krishna was not present. It would require a certain state of mind, certain sadhana, certain rituals to manifest certain Krishna or certain state, mental state in Papaji's mind, in which he says he used to play with Krishna, and that would give him great love and satisfaction and peace and so on. So he was understanding that his joy was not a permanent, lasting joy, because Krishna was not always present. That mental devotional state was not always present. Okay, so and then he went around India looking for a god. In his words, he used to say, "So I'm going to go because I heard that there is a God that's always present. I need to find a God that is always present." He went around India looking for someone who could introduce him to God, a God that's always present. So the love towards God is more intense than the previous one, and consistent than people who look upon God only as a means of save myself. God, give me some things here, and save me from this trouble now. I'm a troublemaker. God, sorry, but again I'm suffering. Help me, help me. So this now we have a devotee of God that experience much more joy, but this joy is not really a lasting joy because it depends on certain factors. There is, though, another category of love to God. This can be found among the rare few who see God as neither the means nor the end. So you don't see God as the end, you don't see God as the means to get anything. Is you see Instead, they viewed God as the self and the self as being identical. So they start seeing God as the true nature, as the self. For such people, loving God equates to self-love. So now we are presenting the notion of God, which is beyond Ishvara. Before it was more the level of saying, I'm going to pray to my personal God. Later on, I become a Kami yogi, or a devotee, or devotee who understands God on a higher level. There are some teachings that subdivide this bhakti attitude in 4 or 5 levels. And then now I'm seeing God as the self, as the true self. So in our language, there is a degree of love and, uh, and, and peace and satisfaction, lasting joy in this relationship with God, which is the one of the Kami Yogi, because the Kami Yogi has a view of God, and he is not there anymore to depending on God. He understood everything, and he knows that God is the giver, God is the creator, the sustainer, but his love is not like, yes, and by the way, I need this and this and this. This is my list of desires. No, the Kami Yogi, he just say, whatever you're going to present me as my life situation. I love you because I understood you. I understood you how beautiful, how incredible. I understood the opportunity of being here, alive, and so on. And I have this relationship, and I want to give back something to you. And Ishvara, as we know, is the intelligent cause, but it is the material cause, and it appears as the material physical universe. So now I want to give something back to this creator. So this is the Kami Yogi that experienced great peace and a joy that is superior to the ones that have a relationship with a God, which is a personal God, without understand the knowledge, the full knowledge that within the relationship between Jiva, Ishvara, and Jagata. No? So you need to come to Vedanta to become a Kami Yogi. A lot of people in the world thinks that, Kami Yogi is all over the place, it's selfless, charity work and so on, and Jesus. No, Kami Yoga is knowledge yoga. You need to come to the Mitya knowledge, to the Ishvara knowledge in the connection with Jagata, which is the Dharma field, with its laws, and the Jiva, the agent that to experience everything in order to grow. So, but here it says that there is another category of devotion to God. This can be found among the rare individuals who see God not as the means, not as the end, so they are not asking anything and they don't want to play with God. They see this divine God as the self, identical of the self, and the self, the last stage would be to understand, okay, and I am that self. And so I am that Ishvara one, I am that Brahman. Now that would be a further step in one's understanding. And that's what the Bhaktas they really they get this idea that we are arrogant when we say I am that Brahman. You understand? Because how can you say that? At the most, you can love Brahman, and that's going to give you protection and satisfaction and peace and joy. You understand? Because you love Brahman, but you say I am that Brahman. They say no. I mean, there is no joy in that. This is just a mental a strategy, that is dry in itself. So they don't understand the yanis. They don't understand the Upanishad. For such a people, loving God is equates to love the life, to love oneself, love everything as God, because the self is loved above all else. Love of God is the greatest to those with a non-dual understanding of existence. So those with a non-dual, and then we are coming read in the in the fields of Vedanta, those with non-dual understanding of God, they are going to love God as Brahman, as the self, as one's very nature. But even the ones who love God in a dualistic manner, they still experience great, great love for Ishvara as the Lord, the creator, the sustainer, and the destroyer, recycler. So it is a love, it's a life lived by this love. It's very satisfying, as sometimes we hear Krishna saying in the Gita, that it gives you a great sense of freedom and satisfaction. It's not the absolute freedom, because you're still dependent on this relationship between you and Ishvara. Bhakti yoga is not a separate yoga as such, but might be seen as the combination of the threefold disciplines: Kama yoga, upasana yoga, and jnana yoga. So this is a good point. A lot of people think that Bhakti yoga is an independent yoga, but no. In our tradition, in the Vedic tradition, Bhakti yoga is not an independent, separate yoga. Bhakti yoga is integral part of karma yoga. Okay, what is Bhakti yoga? Is the 50%, is the other side of the same coin called karma yoga. So karma yoga is made of knowledge and devotion. The knowledge you get on the scriptures that presents the nature of mitya within the relationship between Ishvara, Jiva, Ishvara, and Jagat. No? So we have this Kama Yoga, and within this Kama Yoga, we have the knowledge, and this knowledge should go beyond it's rational, and it should generate an emotional attitude of devotion towards life, let's say, towards God, because you understand God, and it's God is not that guy up there waiting to see if he's going to reward or punish us. God is just life in its very, very nature. The three gunas manifest as life, intelligent, designed. And once you have this clear vision of God, as the system, as sometimes I like to put, and then you have a great love and gratitude, and you want to conform yourself, your thoughts, your desires, and your actions to the laws governing this ordinary reality. So you want to be in conformity, you want to understand it, and you want to love it. You want to say, yes, I agree, this is the only way to live a happy life here, is to live in harmony with all beings. And for that, I need to understand the laws, the laws that govern this meteor reality, this apparent reality. So it's the Kama Yoga. Within Kama Yoga, we have the rational, logical aspect, and then we have the devotional, the attitude, the mental, emotional attitude of appreciation and love and recognition. So therefore, Bhakti Yoga is not an independent, separate yoga. It is within Kama Yoga, Upasana Yoga, and Jnana Yoga. Why it is within Upasana Yoga and Jnana Yoga? You have to have great devotion to be a disciplined Upasana Yogi. If you want to really regulate and control or refine your body, mind, and your sense organs and everything, you have to go into Upasana and meditate and develop the power to regulate this machinery, you understand, rather than allow it to be run by vasanas, and vasanas a lot. Okay, so we need to do this Upasana, but as we know, it takes great effort. So we need to have a certain, ciao Claudio, we need to have a certain bhakti there, devotion, and not to say about jnana yoga. We need to have a lot of bhakti, Yeah, a lot of devotion. We need to be devoted to our nididhyasana, to our, yeah. So Bhakti is a certain attitude that pervades the the 5 stage in our process of spiritual elevation, which begins with Kama Yoga, Upasana Yoga, Shravana, Manana, and Nididhyasana. Bhakti has to be there. Okay, so we're going to begin next time with Bhakti Yoga. We have had a small introduction. I thank you, and Ishwara willing, we meet again soon, next Monday. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnamudashate Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, my friends. Arrivederci. See you next time.
Thank you, Arlindo.